In this lecture, we'll be talking about socio-emotional development in late adulthood. As we get to late adulthood, the range of possibilities for life after 65 is vast. There's really more diversity in terms of what your life is going to look like after age 65 than at any other age in the lifespan. So people in late adulthood are taking comfort in things such as their family, other loved ones. They're taking pleasure in their daily routines and often get quite fixated on liking to have their daily routines be similar. And they're quite interested often in current events and keeping up with what's happening on a daily basis in the world. According to Erik Erikson, late adulthood corresponds with his final stage, his eighth and final stage, which he terms integrity versus despair. So he says integrity versus despair is any time from your 60s all the way until your death. And for Erikson, he said the developmental task in late adulthood is to look back and evaluate what we've done with our lives. And he believes that older adults are really seeking to integrate their unique individual life experiences with their vision of community and vision of, what is happening around them. This idea of a life review is a common theme. Not only do we see it in Erikson's theory of lifespan development, and in particular in late adulthood, but we see this theme of life review occurring in other theories of late adulthood. And when we say a life review, it really is just this sense of looking back at your life and your life experiences, evaluating them and interpreting them, and often reinterpreting them, with the goal of trying to fulfill this need to accept our life and our approaching death. Especially if we are starting to have failing health or feeling like we might be relatively close to dying, whether that's because we have some type of disease or illness or because we've reached an age where many of our family members often pass away around that age. We are often trying to achieve this sense of coherence and meaning and integrity with the life that we've lived and the events that have happened in our lives. So in this life review, there's a reconsideration of previous experiences and the meanings that associated with those experiences. So people are often revising or expanding their understanding of the past, trying to make sense of why they made certain decisions, why other people made certain decisions, why certain things might have happened to them, how that impacted other choices that they made in their lives, and other events that happened. Erikson believes that it's very important how individuals resolve earlier stages of their life to be able to achieve a sense of integrity in late adulthood. So if people were really struggling, let's say in early adulthood, with achieving intimacy and finding close relationships where they could really be vulnerable and open and form these long-term relationships, then it's going to be more difficult for them to achieve integrity in late adulthood. They're more likely to achieve this sense of despair that they can't live their life over and they can't change things. So our goal is really to get to late adulthood and be able to accept our life and accept the fact that, we made decisions, we made choices, they weren't always perfect, and they maybe sometimes had negative consequences, but to try to get to the point where you don't have any regrets. So the positive end is integrity and wisdom. The negative end is sort of this despair that you can't live your life over again. One of the criticisms of Erikson's theory and this stage in particular is that it views late adulthood as very negative and sort of this inactive view of aging, right? So we could imagine this elderly old grandpa sitting on the porch rocking back and forth and just thinking about his life. Well, we know that that's not really the case for everyone. They're not having this just very inactive view and just going over and over their life. That is a part of it, but there's many other parts of their social life and their emotional life that are occurring in late adulthood. So it's a useful perspective, but it's not going to necessarily give us the full view of what late adulthood looks like in terms of social and emotional development. Another theory that's useful when we're thinking about late adulthood is selective optimization with compensation theory. We sometimes call this the SOC theory, S-O-C theory. This concept is central to self theories, where individuals set goals, assess their own abilities, and figure out how to accomplish what they want to achieve despite any limitations or declines that they might have in later life. And these limitations and declines could be physical, they could be cognitive, they could even be social declines of not having as many friends and loved ones around. So let's look at this a little bit in more detail. So researchers Baltus and Baltus in 1994 came up with this theory. You don't have to memorize the names or the dates, but just useful information. The SOC theory, selective optimization with compensation theory, believes that successful aging is related to three main factors. Selecting certain domains of activities, recognizing that in late adulthood we have reduced capacity and loss of functioning in some areas. And so we have to reduce what we're trying to do because we're going to have a reduction in performance and even a reduction in energy. So we can't try to do everything and expect that we're going to do everything really well. We have to kind of select certain things that we're going to focus on to try that we get the most enjoyment out of. Then we can optimize our performance through either practice or the use of some technology. So optimization suggests that it's possible to maintain performance in some areas of our lives, the areas that we select, through continued practice and or the use of new technologies. Then we have to remember that we need to compensate for age-related declines. So compensation becomes relevant when a life task requires a level of capacity beyond our current level. So especially in circumstances where there's a demand, a physical or a cognitive demand that's above what we're able to do in our late adulthood years, we can compensate and sort of tweak things, do things slightly differently. Sometimes this also is using some technologies, but in this case, the C, we're always thinking about what is the age-related decline that we're trying to impact. So let's go through some examples. So our first example is Arthur Rubinstein, a concert pianist, right? So professional concert pianist, has been playing the piano for decades, but he realizes he can't keep up at the same level that he did when he was younger. So he wants to, this is important to him, he wants to continue playing, but he's realized he's going to reduce the scope and play fewer pieces. So maybe he says, I still want to give concerts, but I can't play for the same length of time that I did before. I just don't have, maybe I have some arthritis in my fingers, maybe I have slower reaction time. I just can't do the same length that I did before. So I'm going to reduce the scope. I'm going to play fewer pieces. That's our select. Then I'm going to optimize by spending more time practicing than what I had to when I was younger. I'm going to really optimize so I can play those fewer pieces the best that I can. So in this case, the O, we're optimizing through more practice. C, compensation. Well, we have to compensate for slower reaction times than what he had when he was younger. And so what he did is he would slow down before fast segments were coming up. And this gave the illusion when he sped up that he was playing faster than he actually was. So he's compensating by making this little tweak in how he played to give the same effect to the audience, but compensating for this age-related decline of slower reaction time. Our second example, people in late adulthood tend to love golf. And so we have a golfer in late adulthood. And this golfer, she wants to keep playing golf, but she realized she has to, she has to select to play slightly easier courses. So she's going to just play par 3 courses. And, this will make it a little bit of a shorter and easier time for her. Then she's going to optimize by practicing her putting more and practicing her golf swing more. Now, if we wanted to use the new technology, we could even get a fancy golf club that might have extra technology in there that would make it easier for her. Or we could use some other new technologies maybe to try to optimize her performance. Then for the compensation part, we have to compensate for less muscle strength and less energy than what she had when she was younger. So she's going to use a golf cart instead of walking and carrying her clubs like she did when she was younger, because we need to compensate for this age-related decline of less energy and less muscle strength. When we think about social and emotional development in late adulthood, our loved ones, our family, and our friends are going to continue to be so important to us. Long-term marriages and our spouses, especially if we have a close relationship with them, can buffer against problems of old age and help us extend our life and the quality of our life. What we see from the research is that personal happiness increases with the quality of the marriage or the intimate relationship. So even if you're not married, we're going to become happier the better that relationship is. Now, on the other hand, when we lose a spouse, when a spouse dies, widowhood among the elderly is very common, obviously, and it can be quite problematic, especially for the first 2 years after death. We need to make sure that we are having good social support structures around individuals who lose their partner. Women in general tend to be more likely to be widowed than men because on average women tend to marry men who are slightly older than them, and women tend to live a few years longer than men do. So they're much more likely to be widowed. Our adult children, by the time we get to late adulthood, are going to be great sources of social support for us. Engagement and interaction are quite common between older adults and their grown children. This does vary, obviously, individually. Not everyone is going to continue to have good relationships with their adult children for various reasons, or be able to continue to have contact on a regular basis with them based on other factors. But in general, when we look at the research, we do tend to see that it's very common for them to continue to be engaged and continue to have interaction. These intergenerational relationships are affected by many factors, right? So assistance arises both from the need of the parent and the ability of the grown child to provide that. Personal contact might depend on geographic proximity, right? If you live across the country, it's going to maybe be harder for you to run over and help. Affection is obviously influenced by their history. We do see a gender difference here, so sons are going to feel a stronger obligation. Daughters are going to feel a stronger affection. For adult children, as their parents grow older, every family is going to have to, do some adjusting to changing conditions and circumstances and renegotiating relationships. We have this idea of filial responsibility. This is the concept that adult children are obligated to care for their aging parents. This is more or less prevalent in different cultures. So there are some cultures, especially those who highly value family and highly value doing what's best for the whole of the community and the family versus individual, that this is going to be a much stronger impact. And friendships continue to be quite important. By this stage, it's the quality of the friendships, not the amount of friends that you have, that's going to be really crucial. So having one or two really great friends is going to be more important. Having at least one close confidant, research shows, acts as a buffer against many forms of decreases like lost status, poor health, reduced companionship, loneliness, right? So we want to have high quality friends rather than worrying about having a lot of friends in late adulthood.